Broadcasting from New Braunfels, Texas, home of the historic Green Hall and the best river tubing in America. You're listening to PX1 Sports Radio, where we cover the hottest topics in the sports gaming world and the world of sports entertainment. Here's your host, Mike Peters.
Welcome back. We are back for episode number 13. They say 13 is an unlucky number, and getting together with today's guest has been kind of a hard feat, so maybe that has something to do with it. But he's here today, and we're going to have a good conversation on Madden and Sim, competitive, all those things. If you guys have been on our Twitter conversations, we're going to dive into that a little bit deeper, make it a little bit easier to talk when we have 30 minutes to talk about it versus trying to do it in 140 characters. If you guys are following along on YouTube, stay tuned. I've had a busy week, haven't been able to get anything up on there. I'm going to be out of town this week coming up, so not going to get anything on there. But the following week, the week leading up to EA Play, I do plan on getting more content as news is delivered from Madden 18, so definitely stay tuned for that. But today, we are talking with Curtis Knight, a.k.a. The Natural, owner of Sports Gamers Online. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm really trying to figure out why it took like 12 other people were more important than me.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't have a set interview schedule yet, and that's probably part of my problem why some of these don't always wind up in the right order. So I need to definitely do that, get a better schedule going with people and kind of space them out. But if everything goes well today, we'll definitely like to have you back, especially as we get more Madden 18 news. I know we've talked offline a few times and can have good conversations, so I think it'd be something that guys enjoy. Into today's topic, you jumped in shortly on one of the 300 plus response Twitter conversations I find myself a part of often. And this one was started by Clint Oldenburg, one of the gameplay designers for Madden, and he simply asked the question of, what does sim mean to you? And as most things on Twitter do, it kind of ventured off into different things. It got into, do we need specific settings, and do we need a defined sim from a Madden perspective? And can you have tournaments and stuff that are sim and stuff like that? So just from the basic level of sim, what does sim mean to you?
I think that the issue, we need to define it because the developers are asking us to define it.
But haven't they already defined it though by that screenshot they put out?
What do you mean from the gameplay styles?
Right, where it basically says it plays true to team and player ratings, and plays with all NFL rules and penalties. I mean, do we need to define it beyond that?
Well, being that what they always put in writing isn't what we always see in the field.
True.
That's yet to be decided until we get our hands on the game and actually see how it plays. Because many times they say one thing does something else, but as you know, in actuality, that's not what it really does. So, yet to be determined.
So if you had to define it, how would you define it?
Just loosely, it would be, basically, the gameplay that plays out as closest to, you see, on a typical Sunday. Okay. Not on a typical. So of course there's always exceptions, there's always different things teams do that are a little bit different, to get the hand up on their opponents. Like years ago when the Dolphins came out running, I believe it was the Dolphins came out running maybe, 20 Wildcat plays. Does that mean in a game you can run 20 Wildcat plays because that happened one time or one season? No. So I would say on a typical NFL Sunday, a lot of times people will point to exceptions and say, oh, I can do this because this team did it 1 week, So that's how I would define it. And but I think the bigger point that I was trying to make in that Twitter thread is that people always throw it out there like it's some magical, majestical thing that can, sim, it's there, but we cannot touch it. It's like some spirituality thing of, we can never define sim. It means different. No, sim is not like a deity. Like, yes, we can define it. Yes, there might be some variations that people have slightly different definitions. But when you barrel it down and you look at the rules of most leagues, majority of leagues agree on the same basic rules. That's the point that I was trying to make. And people were like, no, they're all different. Yes, okay. If you're talking about exactly 4th and 1 versus 4th and 2, yes, they're different. But the spirit of the rule rule remains the same. Most sim leagues, I would say a large majority, I even put 90% out there. I've played in hundreds of sim leagues over the years. I could jump in and out of the league left and right without even blinking. I don't even have to look at the rules because I know how to play sim, and I don't even have to look at the rules 9 times out of 10 outside of very, very strict leagues like no click on leagues, no manual control leagues, things of that nature that are a little more strict, or some that are a little more loose, which have basically no rules besides don't be an asshole. But those are extremes. Everything in the middle is 90% the same, and I'll stand by that. Like I was telling Shotman, send me. He was like, "Oh, my 3 leagues all play different." I said, send me the link, send me the rule set. I guarantee I'll put them all 3 together, and 90% of the spirit of the rule will be the same.
Spirit of the rule, yeah. I mean, basically the idea, like you said, is to replicate what you see on Sunday. I think that's the bread and butter, basically. And everybody has a different path as far as how they want to achieve that. Obviously our leagues limit the amount of plays you can call, routes that you can run, because we're trying to narrow down even more. If you only see 1 or 2 corner routes on a Sunday on 15-minute quarters. We don't want to see 10 of them on 10-minute quarters. So, but I mean, they're similar.
And nothing against your league, which you do a great job of running, one of the best out there. But those are more on the strict end of the not typical rules you would see in most leagues.
Right.
So, like, I would put those at the ends of the spectrum. But the large majority within that, I could jump in and out of 100, 10, 20, 30 different leagues, and I don't even have to look at the rules.
Right.
Because my gameplay is, after playing for years, has developed. I play a sim style. Like, there's very few things anyone can say to complain about my gameplay. Now, it took a while for me to get there because I come from the competitive side, which I probably have an interesting view of this. How many guys have competed at a high level on competitive side and came all the way to the other side of sim? So maybe I have a unique perspective on this that most don't. Usually guys start in one or the other, and they're never to be combined or touched, or people usually stick to their side. And I think it is ridiculous. I agree with the guys saying, why are sim players trying to dictate what competitive players do? I think that's ridiculous. I don't know who was saying that. I mean, I think maybe Smitty, one of the guys that said something like that, trying to dictate. But outside of that, I don't think most people are saying that. They're just looking at it and going, wow, that's not football. That sucks. I don't think they're saying you should change how you play. It's just they're looking at it and going, that doesn't look like football, which is one of the issues that I had with the developers. And of course, they have to push their Madden championships. I mean, that's EA brand. Like, I'm fine, but they don't push. They don't have any push or any positivity behind the other end when you have a sim tournament or an actually successful one, and it gets no love, no appreciation. When you watch the sim games, it actually looks like NFL football. You would think they would care about their game actually looking how they want it to look for a change.
Well, we'll get to that in a second, because that's a different conversation, and I was planning on getting to the competitive and then in the tournament scene. But
hey, we could do an hour, so we can go all day.
Well, yeah, we could probably talk on it for a while. So the other part, we have the basic idea, and I'm honestly I'm kind of detaching myself from the word sim. Like, I'm starting to replicate. I like a little bit better, because that's what we're trying to do. I think a lot of us, I like authenticity. Sim, and even competitive guys don't understand what sim is. I think a lot of them think we just want the CPU to play for us, which isn't true. But assuming we have like the basic idea and EA figures out what the general idea of sim is, one of the parts of the conversation came to, do we have to have like some kind of fair play rules? Or do we have to put everybody in a sim mode into a certain box that they all have to play a certain way? I say no. What do you say about that as far as 4th down rules, stuff like that? Is there certain rules that they could put in there for sim players that we need to have that?
For sim players in the sim mode, yeah, I'm fine with them having fair play because that's how they choose to play. But bringing fair play back to the masses or competitive side, I don't agree with that, which is the reason why fair play didn't work for the masses. But in a sim mode, if you're choosing to play a sim mode, I'm totally fine with them tying fair play back to that.
And is fair play, or are we just talking about just like a 4th down rule, like you can punt in a certain situation? Like,
yeah, it was some other rules to go along with that. It was 4th down. I'm trying to remember the other ones.
I don't remember what else it was either.
Yeah, there were a couple, but pretty much 4th down was the biggest one.
See,
they limit you from going for it.
At the time, I liked it because I was one of those too. And at the time, I don't think you saw a lot of teams going for it. on fourth down. You know, it was pretty much just 4th and 1, 4th and 2 on your side or on your opponent's side of the field. Now, though, you know, this is one of the things I asked in that, and you didn't respond to it. Nobody else really did either. Was, you know, nowadays it's so much different. Like you have,
I think you guys had all blocked each other by that point.
well, sidetrack. That's something different. So for example, if it's 4th and 7, and I'm at my opponent's 33-yard line, so it's a 50-yard field goal, and I got a kicker that's got 89 power, and I'm not sure that he's going to go for it. Fair play would tell me I have to punt there. But realistically, you might see an NFL team go for it because if you punt it in the end zone, you're only gaining 13 yards. So why not go for it on 4th and 7? So things like that, like that's why I don't like to put specific things on a sim.
I'm totally fine with them. I'm making you punt in that situation. If that's the case, if you knew this going in on 3rd down, you should have made a better decision. Maybe running the ball or doing a draw to get those couple of yards to put you in better position. So I think that's a strategic thing where you didn't make the right decision on 3rd down as a coach. So yeah, punt.
Possibly. I mean, I guess I could see that. You know, I'm just, I was more or less thinking like, you know, you got a 4th and 2 and then you get a false start. Now you're 4th and 7. And you're like, I mean, they're one-off scenarios and there's not a lot. I think the biggest thing is though, if they get the gameplay right, we don't really need any of those rules. You know, like
I think that's what the developers are relying on.
Right.
I think they're relying on we're going to improve the gameplay. So we don't need all this, you know, argument or what's sim, what's not. We're going to make Madden so realistic that just when you play it, it'll look like NFL football.
Well, then you make decisions the same too. You know, if it's 4th
I think
and
the
7,
problem is that it's taking too long.
Well, that's a different argument. You know, I mean, I don't know. I have a little bit more patience than some people just because I kind of understand. You know, they had a ton of terrible code from PS3, and now they're trying to rip it out and replace it with better code, so it's taking a while. You know, it's debatable if it's taking too long, but I mean, the end of the day, I think if you have a game where you have that's replicating the NFL and you can do realistic strategies, you have enough defenses and defensive options where it makes going for it on 4th and 7 a low percentage play, and people are going to stop going for it on 4th and 7. You watch a Madden Championship now, any major Madden tournament, they never go for it. They never punt on 4th down. They always go for it. And it's like, okay, that's way too easy. And so if the game,
you think that would change?
Well, I mean,
gameplay,
if man coverage is better and deep zones are better, that by itself, I mean, you can't just throw a corner route or a deep post. It's going to be lower percentage.
I don't know if I agree with that but the only thing I would say that would change is they literally cheated and made and changed the percentages on 4th down where your receiver had, you know, 70% less chance to catch the ball, your lineman had 50% less blocking, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's the only way that would change.
Well, they don't do that in the NFL though. And then teams don't go for it because they know they're lower percentage plays. I mean, if you're replicating the NFL, that's what you're trying to get to, right?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, I agree. I understand what you're saying, but in actuality and execution, I don't think that's easy to implement. I mean, okay, so you're saying improve the defense, so they don't go for it. That doesn't change that they have plays that they feel confident they can pick up 7 yards, no matter how good the defense is. If they feel like, okay, I know this play can get X amount of yards if he runs this coverage. I mean, they still call the coverages, and what beats that coverage. So if no matter how good the AI is, you call cover 2, and I hit you in spots that are open across the middle, whatever, that's still a first down, regardless of how good the AI is. I mean, you have to have some openings in the defense, right? I mean, you're not going to just have like crazy lockup defense on 4th down, regardless what happens.
I don't want them to change any of the rules. I just want it to play more true. For instance, you know, post routes. Post routes are one of the most overpowered things in the game this year. You can play a middle of the field close coverage like cover 3, cover 1, and it doesn't matter. Those are largely coming open. Even on cover 2, the safeties are so late in breaking on those posts coming in that they don't get enough pressure, and so it's a higher percentage play. Very often it comes in there. Even like a Tampa 2 where the middle linebacker's dropping back, he doesn't get enough depth. The safeties drop too far back. Still gets too much space in there. So it's things like that. If those safeties playing better, and if man coverage is better, so that it's not as automatic, I think you have a higher chance of having a drop or having the guy coming in there and knocking it away, which lowers the percentage. It's probably never going to be realistic necessarily, but if you go from, you know, they're like, oh, I got an 80% chance to convert to, even if it's more 50-50, I think then the question, there's at least some doubt in there, and they're like, all right, well, if I hit the right coverage, I might be able to complete this play, but if he surprises me and he calls this, and then you have more of that back and forth strategic battle, which plays into the next part, which we brought up earlier, which was competitive Madden. And I think you're right. Not a lot of people are necessarily trying to dictate what competitive mode has. I think a lot of sim guys, it's kind of more or less this needs to look at like competitive or look like real football on Sundays. My stance on that, and last year I would have agreed. This year I've changed.
Well, hold on. Let me address the other fourth down one for you. Change the gears there. The fact that I think for me, I've played Madden too long and competitively as well to think that anyone. A lot of times going for fourth down, not even strategic. It's like emotional or it's like momentum based. So even if on paper and even if the odds, let's say they improve the defense to the point where it goes from 80% to 50% chance of getting fourth down. A lot of times it's a pride thing. A lot of times it's not mental. It's not you know what I mean? It's not like if you do the numbers, that's a stupid play.
I'm not saying they're never going to go for it. I'm just saying if you lower the chances because the defense is better, eventually guys will start to register and they'll be like, all right, I should probably punt here. You'll see more punting.
Maybe. I mean, hopefully I think I have less confidence.
We'll see. I think if you look at the way the game played before the first patch, I think they made strides, and I think they're going to get there now. Whether we get there this year or not,
I think people hated it at the. I mean, I don't know. I mean, for me, it's Madden. Like I know there's differences, but it still plays like Madden. But a lot of people really hated. I don't say a lot. I'll take that back. There were a very vocal minority that hated a lot of the changes after the patch, and they believed that it dumbed the game down or made the game a little bit easier or because that first patch and of course not of course but I've played the game early, and a lot of the feedback that I had given before the game was released they wound up changing it after in that patch because I'm like, dude, like I understand people need to not try to throw out of sacks, and you're trying to teach people not to do that. But in reality, people are going to be mad as hell when their quarterback the ball's flying all over the place and these fumbles. This is not going to go over well.
That's one thing me and you both agree on, because the hardcore sim guys are like, oh yeah, you got to hold L2 and R2 and you got it. And I'm like, come on, man. Like 80% of the people, probably maybe more, they don't want that. Just because you do and you think it's quote unquote sim, you got to think of the big picture. I hated that. I mean, guys were getting.
It's real though. It's real.
Yeah,
they were right.
Outside of Brett Favre diving on the ground for Michael Strahan, how often do you really see the quarterback drop on the ground on a sack?
No. I wasn't saying that. The big thing what I was saying is that the throwing out of a sack. Right. No one in NFL does that. No one sees no quarterback drop back. They're like, the rush is coming. Throw to the running back. Right.
That's pretty rare.
Like no one does that. Like they don't drop back and say, I'm about to get hit. Let me throw to someone so it can be incomplete. No, they like duck or cover or scramble. So maybe there's other mechanics they could have done better to counter that. So like maybe a better evade mechanic, or make it so the quarterback's not stuck in the mud when he takes off to run like he is now. Yeah. Something else to counter that increased pass rush and guys get pummeled and pummeling. There's no counter to that besides get the ball off.
Well, there's no option either. It seemed like they put that mechanic in and then there was no tuning it. It was either it was in or it was out. And then they took it out, and then it was kind of, as far as the sacks and throwing out of sacks, it was pretty much like Madden 16. It was really weird. Like that mechanic was in, and then they
it wasn't. I don't think it was in and out thing. It was a percentage, definitely a percentage that they can tweak and turn it up or down. It just they lowered it. But in
the beta, you had strip sacks. And I think people were saying that you could do it at launch. But then after that patch, you never saw the end reach his hand around and knock it out. But anyway, that's a different topic.
But the strip sacks, I mean, let's talk it out. I mean, but the strip sacks weren't the people's biggest issues. It was the fact that they couldn't throw out of sacks, regardless of strip sack or not, just a regular hit. And when you try to throw out a sack, they use the real ball physics, like your hand's not moving forward, the ball's exposed, it's a fumble. Like that was actually what was happening, but people were just fumbling so much that they didn't like it.
Well, I know, and I think that's the thing, that whatever mechanic, that's why I think it felt like they couldn't tune it, because it wasn't like it was just decreased. It went from one end of the spectrum to the other. But I don't know. It's always weird how they do patches, and always one size feels like they went too far. But going back to the point at hand as far as the competitive mode and dictating towards competitive, I don't think a lot of guys are trying to dictate. But the one thing that people say the most is, well, competitive needs to look like NFL Sunday. You're a guy that played a lot competitively. You're now more sim. I'm of the opinion that I don't think it has to. If the NFL Network is cool with it, if EA suits are cool with it, if the people playing the game and playing for the money are cool with it, and if the people watching it, largely the majority, are cool with it, why does competitive Madden have to have everything that the quote unquote sim league does? Why does it have to? Why can't it be an esport on its own and have its own set of rules?
I don't wait. So I feel like you're like making a lot of assumptions there. Do you have like data backing up what like everything you just?
I'm
you,
not.
like, checked
No,
a bunch
I'm
of
not
boxes,
saying.
like based upon
I'm
what are you
saying
saying?
I'm saying if the NFL Network is
Oh,
okay,
if
and if the suits are okay with it, because we don't. The devs are not saying,
Well,
"Oh, hey, we hate this," or the devs are saying we don't want penalties, we don't want injuries in there, because that's what the competitive players are. Obviously, the NFL Network isn't yelling at them saying, "Hey, this got to look more like real football." The fans largely don't seem to care. So, do we have to have
the
those
devs.
things?
No, I disagree with that. The last points. I don't know. I'm not in the meetings with NFL, so I don't know whether they're happy or not. But the devs were very embarrassed by that last Madden championship. Not the most recent one, but the one the year before
Well,
with
yeah,
that
2 years
fullback
ago.
dive stuff. They're on record. They were very embarrassed by that.
Well, that's
By how
different.
the
I'm
game
talking
played.
about penalties and injuries mostly is what I mean. We're
Wait,
drops
we're
and
talking about how the
fumbles.
game looks, right? What were we talking about here? Are you saying how you
The
saying
last
they're happy with it?
the
Happy with
last
just
Madden
penalties?
championship, the most recent one that we just had a week or so ago, that one outside of Volterax using the swerve and outside of basically the same few formations being used overall, I thought played very well. The only really gripe is, well, you didn't have as many formations, so if there's more defenses and you can adjust, and if they're allowed to do custom audibles or whatever, like that's one thing that's been brought up. So maybe that makes it more diverse in that sense. And then you get rid of the swerve. Like outside of penalties and injuries, to me, it was pretty close to real football. They're adapting to what their opponents are doing. And so a lot of sim guys are saying, well, that's not good enough. You got to have injuries and penalties. Otherwise, it doesn't look like football on Sunday. And my response is, it's competitive Madden. It doesn't necessarily have to look like football on Sunday, does it?
That's a good question. It's not really. I mean, I understand why they don't have it, and if Madden is looking to become an esport, they have to push it more being based upon skill and less about things you don't control. So it's matter. It's really what kind of direction they want to go in. Do they want to? Is this they're really going towards building an esport, which seems like what they're going to do? Then they have to go in that direction and cut those things out even though they exist in real football,
Right.
they have to go. So maybe, they can have a championship or tournament, whatever, based upon the different modes. That's and that goes back to which is a great segue into our sim league
That was where we were going.
championship
Yes. Sim
there.
tournaments.
So maybe they don't put all their eggs in one basket and just have one mode.
Well, so for that, part of the Twitter discussion was based around, can you even implement sim rules in a tournament? And
Yep.
it doesn't matter. Now, I agree on a small scale as far as not a whole lot of money. I think you can. I think the league crawler tournament that you guys partner up with, you guys can do that. One of my counter to that is A, there's not a lot of money on it. It's $1,500, and B, there's 2 representatives from each league, so they're representing their league, and if they look like an a-hole, then they have to answer to their league commissioners and their other league members because they embarrassed them. If you put those same people on a stage for $50,000, my contention is it doesn't matter what rules you have. They may try to, but they're gonna do what they want to win, because that $50,000 is life changing. $100 is not. I'd say even $1,000. You allow somebody to pay their rent playing in the tournament, your rules get sketchy. You play for $50,000, I think they go out the window. Plus, then you're also asking tournament officials to sit there and have to watch them, and you have to pause games and say, all right, well, that was a rule. This is the penalty. Like, I just think that's a mess. Like, I don't see how you do that on a competitive stage.
Yeah, I think I do agree with you. Money, bringing large amounts of money, it definitely would change. But I think like either the two ways you can handle that. One, you could not it can just not be about a big sum of money. It's about the love of the game. Let's say they have it where we fly you and a friend to blah 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 here and there and cover hotel accommodations, but it's not for the 500,000. It's about who's the best sim player in the country. So just not making it about a ton of money, a ton about more about representing not necessarily your league or whatever, just being a great sim player and being recognized. And I know a lot of people would do it just for that recognition. It's not always about the big dollars. So a sim league or sim tournament would not be about, it wouldn't be an esport. So they're not even going to that direction. They're not trying to look for big bucks, whatever. I would do it just to love of the game and be recognized. I don't need to get paid for that. And a lot of guys who are sim tend to be older guys.
Right.
I don't need a paycheck from EA. I'm good. Right. I don't need that money. So I would do it just because I love playing Madden. And a second way to do it would be a rule. You would have to have stricter rules built in to it, and how you enforce it. That might be a little bit messier than before, or it's just you break a rule, you punt. And that's a part of it. Or that's something we have to sit down and look at. But if you brought more money to the table when you had to bring the money in, then I would say a sim tournament definitely would need more rules, or like you said, or maybe as they make the game more realistic, you'll need less rules than they do now to police people.
Well, I mean, and that's the goal. If the game's more realistic, you don't have to have as many rules. But let's also be honest. If you put out there and you say, okay, we're going to have a $50,000 tournament and we're going to have sim rules, who do you think's going to win it? The competitive guys. I mean, they're going to adapt and they'll play by the rules, but they're still going to beat a sim guy. The guys playing Madden 50, 60 hours a week versus the typical sim guy that's got a family and a job that plays 5 to 10 hours a week. They're not. It doesn't matter what rules you put out there. I know a lot of guys think that competitive guys, they don't know strategy and they're just exploiting glitches, and that's bull. It's total and complete fabrication. Like, they don't understand. Those guys play Madden for a living. Like, they are going to beat you no matter what rules you put out there. You might get to have a better chance the more rules you have, but that speaks more to the average sim guy not knowing the game as well. But they're still going to beat you.
I think, in a large part, yeah, but I think depending on the rule set, like let's say if you had some rules like NBL where you have to run a different play, and you get those guys at their comfort zone where they can't run that same 5-10 play rotation, I think it'll be a lot closer than you think. Because I play a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
Not the newer guys out, but I play some of the guys there. And it'll be a lot closer than you think.
I mean, that's a fair point.
I've had games come down to field goals. I can't, right. And that's not me playing Madden every day.
Well,
and I'm not the exception. There's some other sim guys out there that are really, really good players that if you put them, it's almost like the whole thing with what's the Mayweather and who's the MMA guy?
McGregor.
Like McGregor's an amazing fighter. He's destroying people in MMA. Change the rules, put him in a little different situation he's not comfortable in, he might get knocked out. He might win, but it's a good chance he might get knocked out. You might surprise him. Might surprise some people.
That's a fair point. I mean, I think you're right. The one thing that competitive guys do is they get to sit and they can lab the same 5-10 plays over and over, and they get really good at that. And then if you actually force them to
open up that playbook.
Yeah, and if you made longer quarters too, like if you actually had 7 or 8 minute quarters, and it's more of a game instead of more of just more of a strategy. I guess I can see that. If they had enough time, like if they had a month or between tournaments, and they said, okay, that was the last competitive tournament, now we're going to do a sim tournament, and they got a month to play, and they're playing 50, 60 hours a week, and the sim guys are still having their lives. I don't know. You're right. It might be. It might be closer, and I think you might see some upsets.
It'll definitely be closer.
It could be interesting.
I've actually had the experience. See, a lot of people talk about is like in theory and on paper. I've had the experience that I set up a game between a top or very, very good guy in that a competitive guy who I would say maybe top 50 player. And I had one guy in my league who, well, I'm not in the league, but I was formerly in the league, and the guy's really, really good, and he won like the league Super Bowl like 3 years in a row, and he was saying, oh man, those Madden Challenge guys are so, they're not that good. They're, I can hang, and everyone's laughing like, dude, those guys will, kill you. I actually set up a game between him and a competitive player, and he beat him, but again, it was no rules. He beat him by 2 scores. Now, like 10 points, basically. But he hung with him the whole game. And this is a guy who, like you said, doesn't play Madden all day. It's not his job. He runs a gyro shop. He booted up and went head to head with a competitive guy who plays all day, who labs with somebody who's actually on the Madden stage up there in the chairman. I'm not dropping no names, but and he beat him by 10. So it's not that far apart. You level that playing field and bring them over to a sim side with rules and open up the playbook, it's going to be a lot more competitive than you think.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, and here's the thing. I think a lot of competitive guys think that sim guys don't have any skill. I'm not saying that. I don't want to throw myself in there because I think I'm good, and in our league, like we keep track of all that. I win like 70% of our league games, and I'm good. But I don't know if playing online, I win like 55, and I don't know if that's just because I haven't learned to deal with the nickel 2 blitz, and I don't play to figure out the same 3 or 4 plays, or if I'm just not that good. But I do, we have had guys come through. I've played in other leagues where there are some guys that are really good that can play within a sim mindset. Like there was one league on it was 4 or 5 years ago, but he was a football coach, and at the time I was still pretty good. I'd win 65% of my game. He was a football coach, and he played, and he beat me 49-0. And
wow.
Yeah, and I'm like, all right, I'm pretty good, but this guy was on a different level. So there's definitely good sim guys out there, which makes me wonder though, if they're that good and they can play, why don't they play more online and try to compete for the money? But maybe they just
because they don't want to, or they have families like me.
Right, just don't have the time for it anymore.
If you look, if like I said, tune in to when we do those league crawler tourneys. You have to remember, these are the top 2 guys from most of the large, well-known leagues. So all these guys are good. These guys are elite guys. Again, not on a competitive level, but in a sim, these guys are. I would that top 8, put some rules in. I have no problem throwing that top 8 against some competitive guys, and of course they're not going to beat the problems and the top guys like that. But that top 8 from that tournament, I put them up against the maybe bottom 100 of
right, yeah,
of those.
I don't dispute that at all. Yeah,
the bottom 50. Those guys know the game. It's just that they don't, they choose to play something that is their idea closer to real NFL football.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. One thing I want to touch on before we wrap up, you mentioned having a tournament where maybe EA would fly you in, and I only want to touch on this because some guys might think, yeah, we need that. So my question to that would be, what is the benefit for EA to pay to fly tens of thousands of dollars to fly sim guys out to have a tournament that, even if you broadcast it online, that's even more money because then you got to pay Scott Cole or whoever to broadcast it. Like, what's the incentive for Madden to put something like that on for the sim community?
I mean, I think it's no different than why they do it for the other community. The fact that there's people that play that mode that feel neglected, that they don't have anything like that for them. There's no, I mean, what has EA done for the CFM sim community?
What do they have to do?
What do they have to do for mud? What do they have to do for any other mode? What do you mean? They don't have to do anything, right?
They're having a competitive
They could
mode.
Not have any. What do you mean?
What I'm saying is they have a competitive
They have
mode.
to do the esports tournament. They don't have to do it either. Like, no one has to do anything.
Well, hold on.
But the fact that you do that for your fan base to get them excited about that mode.
MUT makes tens of millions, maybe $100 million. Like, these guys are playing MUT and they are selling MUT by playing, and it's a money-making thing for them. They can pay out $1 million in the competitive scene over the course of the year because they're making tens of millions of dollars off of MUT, and all these competitors are probably making that money back by doing all their promotions and stuff and getting more people like, oh, I want this card, and they're buying tons of packs. The CFM community, I 100% agree that we pay our $60 and they need to give us something to keep us playing, and I'm of the belief that the more people you have playing CFM that aren't playing MUT, the more they might, especially the better the game gets, they might dabble their toes in MUT, and then you make even more money from it. But they put on the tournaments for MUT because MUT makes a ton of money. Franchise, I would argue, doesn't make much money. I mean, I don't know the sales numbers, and I don't know what percentage of sales they tie to CFM, but that's the one issue that I have too with guys saying, hey, well, you owe us this, you do it for them, why not us? Well, MUT's making hundreds of millions of dollars. You guys don't want to have microtransactions. You guys don't want to pay anything more than your $60, but yet you want EA to give you the same thing that these guys are, and those guys spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on MUT. Why do they owe CFM guys the same thing?
And I think it's great. It's such a great conversation, and I love the fact that I've been playing and in the community so long that I that I can see the whole picture of this. And where your argument falls apart is that there was Madden challenges before MUT existed. Why were they? Why did they have those tournaments?
Game, though. That was just based on the game, and they wound up falling off because they didn't make any money. And then so now they brought them back when MUT started going. They brought them back because it's tons of money.
There was years of Madden challenges.
Well, then they went away though. That's what I'm saying. I mean, we were talking PS2 days, and so that's another thing that I think sim guys lose. Back in the PS2 days, that's all you had. You had play versus your friend, and you had franchise, and you had superstar mode. That was it. That was all they had a program for. Well, now it's not like that. Now you have MUT, and MUT has changed the game. MUT takes in, probably 80% of the money that Madden makes just comes from MUT, not even, including unit sales. So that's changed the game.
No one's arguing that. The point is, your point you said is, why would they do this for the same? Why would they do that? Why did they do it before? To drum up excitement for the game. But there was
no MUT.
It's not. Again, you're looking at just the dollars and cents. Look at the consumer response to the game. Madden does not have very good consumer positivity towards their game. A lot of people out there are disenfranchised. They're losing a lot of people every year. Their sales has been lower many years out. I don't have exact sales figures in front of me, but there's some people not happy with the game where they're saying, I'm not buying Madden anymore. Right. How you get those people excited about the game? And that the Madden challenge and the Madden bust, even though that wasn't totally EA's thing, but the Madden bust, that kept people excited. And yes, those were competitive players, but it wasn't just about MUT. It was about when you're saying, hey, this is we have a CFM event too. Here you go. It doesn't have to be $500,000 or whatever $1,000. Just something to show, hey, this is a community event for franchise mode. So what and yes, franchise mode is not. They don't spend the money that month. It's not even close. Of course not. But as far as numbers, last time when I spoke with someone, they're actually franchise was the most played mode. Not saying CFM, but just franchise, meaning just everyone that plays offline was the most played mode by the most amount of people. So they're not as voracious consumers as the MUT people who play 8 hours a day and spend $200, on top of their 60. No, they're not. But it's still a lot of people out there that play franchise mode only, and to have a franchise type event, whether it's a tournament or whatever else they come up with, I think would be great for the community and have some positivity towards Madden and franchise.
Well, isn't just making franchise better though? I mean, isn't that really? I think some of that goes away. I think
why can't we have both?
Well, but that's what I'm saying. I don't think
I wish I had the ability to post GIFs in this conversation.
Well, no, I mean, what I'm saying is, we're talking. We went from some guys are like, wait, we won a $50,000 tournament, and I think we both agree that that's probably not going to happen just because they're not making the same kind of money. So then you're just like, well, let's just promote, CFM. Let's just have a regular tournament. And so basically, I think the gist of the conversation, and from having these conversations on Twitter, is just that the CFM and quote sim community kind of feels left out. And part of it is
deservedly so.
To some degree, yes. I mean, I think some of
it is.
Degree. Well, hold on. I think some of it is just economics.
Touched the most seriously.
Well, that's where I'm going. I said some of it is Mutt is obviously generating the lion's share of the revenue, so it makes sense. It's logical that's where the lion's share of the stuff is going. However, I would say that, like you said, franchise is widely used. If that's the most played mode, there hasn't been great strides in the last couple of years. So my point was, if they this year, maybe they've been laying in the weeds, they've just been doing what they can because this year Madden 18, they just want to blow everybody away. We think there's a single player story mode coming. We think there's team play coming back. Obviously the Frostbite. Don't know anything about franchise, but what if they knock it out of the park with franchise? What if they add franchise highlights and they have like a Tony Bruno type show and they just like franchise, they fix the free agency stuff and they add in player traits. Like if they really kill it with franchise mode, doesn't a lot of that just go away anyway? Because people are just happy with their franchises and that was what they were really complaining about anyway.
Yeah, that's a lot of what ifs you threw out there. But...
Well, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm speculating. I'm hoping, there hasn't been a lot done to franchise. And I think that's where a lot of the, not to make a pun here, but the disenfranchisement from CFM and sim players comes from is just, you guys haven't given us a lot. We're spending our $60. We know Mutt makes a ton of money, but, throw us a bone here. We know a lot of people are playing it. That's still money that's coming in. Why can't you do more for the mode? And I think if they really put effort into it. And, Rex said on my podcast that franchise usage was up twofold over previous years. You spoke to somebody that said it's the most played mode. So they got to see that and say, look, let's put more into this mode. And I think if they do, basically this all goes back to the PS2 days. They had all that stuff. They're trying to come back. They're bringing it back now. Finally, 10 years later, we're starting to get this stuff. They finally recovered from last generation that just set them back 10 years. And now we're finally starting to get this stuff. If you get a lot of that stuff that was in franchise before, I think a lot of this goes away. Honestly, I don't really think most sim guys want to play tournaments. I think they just want a good CFM. I think they want to be able to play in their online leagues. They want to have fun. They want them to go August to August. They don't want guys, quitting because it's boring. They want to be able to play an offline franchise and have fun and stay engaged. And I think if they do that, I think a lot of this goes away. But we're going to stop there. We're going to wrap it up. I definitely appreciate you coming on. It's always an interesting conversation. I think you're right. We could go for hours talking about it because, I think we both have strong opinions, either whether we agree, and I think a lot of stuff we agree on, but always a good conversation. We'll definitely have you on later on the summer when we get more info. Maybe after EA Play, we'll get an opportunity to be hands-on and we can kind of discuss it then. Obviously, we told you you're the owner of Sports Gamers Online. I think a lot of people, most people listening probably already know, but if they don't, tell them how to find you.
Yeah, just be sure to check us out. We should have some gameplay soon after or at EA Play. So you can check us out www.sportsgamersonline.com, as well as YouTube Sports Gamers Online, Twitter Sports Gamers On, Facebook Sports Gamers Online. So check us out. We're definitely going to have more Madden 18 content as well as a bunch of other content for all the new games and sports games that are coming out, and a lot of stuff's being announced. So getting around that time. Busy season. Oh
yeah, it is. It's exciting. It was weird. We didn't get a whole lot this week. I thought they would release something, but I'm pretty sure this week and the weeks leading up to EA Play is going to be really exciting, and we're going to find out a lot about it. Again, thank you for coming on. We definitely appreciate the time. Look forward to linking up with you at EA Play. Maybe we can play again, and we'll chat later.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. You too. Thank you for listening to another episode of the PX1 Sports Radio Podcast. For more, you can find us on Twitter at PX1 Sports or online at px1sports.com. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.